The storm was more than rain. It was a furious, unrelenting wall of water, slamming into the windshield of the massive Kenworth truck as if nature itself were trying to force its way inside. The wipers moved at their fastest setting, scraping back and forth in a hypnotic rhythm, barely keeping up as sheets of rain blurred the narrow back road into a single black ribbon. Roger tightened his grip on the steering wheel. At 55, his hands were thick and callous, permanently shaped by decades of gripping gears, chains, and steering wheels. His eyes, sharp, tired, and seasoned, reflected millions of miles of solitude. He had driven roads like this for most of his adult life. Forgotten highways, neglected by county crews, and avoided by anyone with a choice. Roger preferred driving at night. The darkness erased the monotony of endless fields and silent towns. It allowed him to disappear into the road, alone with his thoughts. Sometimes those thoughts were worse than the wet asphalt beneath his tires, but at least they were familiar. He was hauling a load of lumber north through the Midwest, aiming to arrive before dawn. The downpour forced him to slow well below schedule, but he didn't care. He was never in a hurry to get home. Home, after all, was no longer a place. Ever since his wife died 5 years ago, his real home had become the cab of this truck. Steel and leather, smelling of stale coffee, oil, and old tobacco. The house he owned sat empty most of the year, frozen in time, haunted by memories he wasn't ready to face. Then the headlights caught something. Roger's heart skipped. 200 yards ahead, on the narrow, muddy shoulder, silhouettes appeared in the beam of his high lights. For figures, walking single file through the storm. No hazard lights. No broken-down car. People. Roger's jaw tightened instantly. His instinct screamed a single word. Don't. He'd heard enough stories. Assaults on lonely roads. Decoys used to hijack trucks. Men who stopped out of kindness and never made it home. His right foot stayed firm on the accelerator. Don't stop. Keep moving. The world was full of misery, and Roger was no saint. Just a tired man doing his job. But as the truck drew closer, the lights revealed a detail that shattered his logic. The smallest figure, a boy no older than 7, turned around at the sound of the engine. He didn't wave. He didn't shout. He just looked. His face was pale, eyes wide with pure, unfiltered terror, as he clung to the leg of the man in front of him. Roger saw that face for only a second. It was enough. A jolt shot down his spine. Damn it! Roger growled, slapping the steering wheel as he slammed the air brakes. The hiss of compressed air and the scream of tires sliced through the storm. The Kenworth shuddered and slowed, finally grinding to a stop 50 yards ahead of the family. Roger exhaled slowly. He had either just made the worst mistake of his life, or the best decision he'd made in years. He rolled down the passenger window, just a few inches, keeping the engine running. One hand stayed near the gear stick. If he saw a weapon, he'd be gone in seconds. In the side mirror, he watched as the man broke from the group and ran toward the cab. The woman and children stayed behind, huddled together in the rain. When the man reached the window, Roger saw desperation etched into every line of his face. He couldn't have been more than 32, yet his eyes looked far older. Rain streamed down his cheeks, mixing with tears he didn't bother hiding. "Sir, please," the man shouted over the storm. "I don't want money. I don't want anything. My kids can't walk anymore. My little girl has a fever. Please, just take us to the next town with a roof. I'm begging you." There was no threat in his voice, only the broken plea of a father who felt like he had failed. Roger closed his eyes for a second. Then he unlocked the door. "Get in. Quick," he ordered gruffly. The man signaled, and the woman ran forward with the children. Climbing into the high cab was an ordeal. They were weak, soaked, slipping on mud. When they finally sailed behind the seats and into the passenger side, the cab filled with the smell of wet clothes, cold fear, and exhaustion. Roger's sanctuary suddenly felt very small. The woman, Adele, cradled the little girl, Sophie, wrapping her in a shawl that was just as wet as everything else. The man, Bradley, sat rigidly, shaking uncontrollably, not from the cold, from relief. Roger turned the heat up full blast and eased the truck back onto the road. Silence settled heavily in the cab, broken only by the hum of the heater and the chattering teeth of the little boy, Timmy. Roger stared at the road, feeling their eyes on him. He knew he'd broken his golden rule. Never pick up strangers. But watching Adele try to dry her daughter's forehead with her soaked sleeve, Roger knew the rules didn't matter tonight. Here, he grunted, pointing to the dashboard. Coffee. Sandwiches. Eat! Bradley stared at the food like it was treasure, but didn't touch it. He split the sandwich carefully, giving the largest pieces to Adele and the kids. He poured a small amount of coffee into the thermos lid and handed it to his wife. Roger watched through the windshield's reflection. That single act, putting family before himself, earned Bradley his respect. Where were you headed? Roger finally asked. Apple Valley, Bradley replied softly. Roger frowned. That's 150 miles. Bradley lowered his gaze. We got evicted this morning. No car, no bus money. A cousin said there's work there. A quiet, bureaucratic tragedy. Adele spoke gently. We told the kids it was an adventure. Roger's grip tightened on the wheel. He thought of his own son, unseen for 10 years over pride and money. Thought of how he had failed his family emotionally, even when he'd provided everything else. An hour later, neon lights appeared ahead. The last mile diner. We're stopping, Roger said. Bradley protested, but Roger cut him off. If I eat, my passengers eat. Inside, Lou the waitress didn't ask questions. For plates arrived. Hot food, milk for the kids. Roger barely touched his coffee. For the first time in years, he shared a table. Later, in the parking lot, Roger tested Bradley with the engine. Bradley passed. When the Apple Valley exit appeared, Roger drove past it. I didn't miss it, he said calmly. I chose not to stop. Bradley panicked. Roger explained everything, then made the offer. A job, a home, a chance. Bradley accepted. As dawn broke, the truck turned onto a dirt road toward Pine Ridge. Roger wondered if he was crazy. But deep down, he knew something had already changed. The dirt road twisted through towering pines and ancient oaks, the tires crunching softly as dawn spread its pale gold light across the land. When Roger finally eased the Kenworth to a stop, the engine sighed like a tired animal at rest. Welcome to the haven, he said quietly. Bradley and Adele climbed down, stretching stiff legs, staring in silence. Before them stood a sprawling ranch-style house with weathered wooden siding and a sagging shingle roof. Paint peeled in tired strips. The garden was a jungle of weeds. One second-floor window was boarded shut. But beneath the neglect, the place had bones, strong ones. To the side loomed a massive wooden metal shed, half workshop, half garage. The children ran straight for an old tire swing hanging from an oak tree, laughing for the first time in days. Roger watched them, something warm and unfamiliar loosening in his chest. Inside the house, stale air greeted them. Furniture sat draped in white sheets like ghosts frozen in time. Roger pulled open the curtains, letting sunlight spill across dust motes dancing in the air. Guest rooms are down the hall, he said. Hot water works. Beds, too. Adele noticed everything. The dead plants, the untouched calendar from 5 years ago, the dried coffee cup left behind like a relic. This house wasn't dirty. It was grieving. Outside, Roger led Bradley into the workshop and to open the heavy doors. Bradley froze. Despite the cobwebs and rust, the space was magnificent. A hardwood workbench, antique chisels and planes, a lathe, saws, and, toward the back, a full mechanic's pit. My father was a carpenter, Roger said. I'm a mechanic. This place used to keep the town alive. Bradley ran a reverent hand across the bench. With oil and care, he whispered, this shop could be something special. Roger smiled. Then tires screamed on gravel. A modern pickup skidded to a halt, and a man jumped out, slamming the door. He was younger, 38 maybe, dressed in city clothes that didn't belong here. Stephen, Roger's son. What the hell is this? Stephen barked, eyes sweeping over Bradley with open contempt. Who's this? Roger stepped forward. Watch your mouth. This is Bradley. He works here. Stephen laughed cruelly. Works? Dad, this place is a ruin. And you're picking up bums now. He circled Bradley like a predator. Listen, pal. This property is getting sold. Take your family and get out. Bradley lowered his head. Maybe we should go, he murmured. Roger grabbed his arm. No, he goes. Stephen sneered. You're not thinking straight. I'll have you declared incompetent. The threat hung heavy. Adele stepped forward, voice steady despite trembling hands. We're not parasites. Your father offered us work. Maybe if you visited more, he wouldn't have to find family on the road. Stephen flushed with rage. Roger picked up a heavy wrench, not to swing, but to stand his ground. This is my house. My name's on the deed, and as long as I breathe, I decide. Stephen backed away, venom in his eyes. This isn't over. He sped off, dust trailing behind him. Bradley slumped onto a bench. We should leave. Roger shook his head. No, if you leave, he wins. They stayed, and they worked. For a week, the haven transformed. Rust disappeared. Tools shone. Paint dried. The workshop hummed with life. Adele turned the house into a home. The kids planted a garden. Then the police arrived. Stephen stood smug beside them. Illegal squatters, he declared. Roger calmly invited them inside. The officials walked through spotless rooms, a stock kitchen, clean children doing homework. This looks fine, the social worker admitted. Roger handed over documents. A clean mental evaluation. A notarized employment contract. The officer turned to Stephen. False reports are a crime. Stephen's face collapsed. Get out, Roger said softly. I found my family. Stephen left and never returned. Years passed. The haven became a landmark. Travelers stopped for repairs and left with handcrafted furniture. Roger sold his truck. He stayed home. He taught Timmy to carve, Sophie to garden. When Roger passed away, it was peaceful, surrounded, loved. His will left everything to Bradley and Adele. A scholarship for the kids. To Stephen, he left one thing, an empty toolbox, and a note, learn to build your own life instead of stealing from others. The road that night had changed everything, because one man chose to stop.